Okay, imagine this for a second. You wake up, maybe not literally, but you have this sudden, unsettling thought. What if the life you're currently living, the big choices you've made, the things you believe are true, even your deepest feelings and desires, what if they aren't actually yours? What if they've been shaped, maybe even kind of dictated, by other people's expectations, the way you were raised, or just influences you've never even noticed swirling around you?
It's a striking realization, isn't it? It really forces you to stop and ask how much of the person you present to the world, how much of who you feel you are is truly authentic, and how much of it is, well, a performance.
Yeah, like a mask you've learned to wear.
Because you thought you had to, maybe, because of external pressures.
Exactly. Are you, in a fundamental way, just following a script someone else wrote for you? And that feeling, that profound question, it gets right to the heart of what we're diving into today, drawing from this incredible source material we looked at. It revolves around a truly profound insight from the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung. He famously suggested that life doesn't truly begin until you find yourself.
Right, but what does that actually mean? Finding yourself. Is it just, becoming a little more self-aware, figuring out your likes and dislikes? Or is this material pointing to something far more significant, maybe a deep, almost alchemical transformation?
That's the core mystery we're trying to unravel here. And our guide today is Carl Gustav Jung. You probably know him maybe as a contemporary Freud, but he branched off into what's called depth psychology, really plunging into the hidden layers of the human mind, the unconscious.
And a key point this source material emphasizes about Jung is that he saw psychological growth not just as like adjusting to society or fixing problems, but it was this whole process he called individuation. It's this journey of becoming your most whole, most authentic, unique self.
Okay, but here's the stark reality check that comes through loud and clear in this source. Most people. They never actually embark on that journey. They stay kind of trapped, living a life shaped by all that external conditioning we mentioned.
Yeah, constantly seeking validation from the outside world, maybe believing happiness lies in fitting in, getting approval, playing that expected role.
And the consequence, often, is this persistent, quiet sense that something is, well, missing.
Right, exactly. A feeling that the life you're living isn't quite yours, even if everything on the surface seems fine. The sources suggest Jung believed true life, a life of meaning and fulfillment, starts when you stop running from that feeling and actually begin looking inward.
So our mission in this deep dive is to understand what exactly prevents most people from making that shift, what holds them back, how you can potentially break free from those unseen forces, and maybe uncover a final, powerful realization this source material promises. Something that can completely reframe how you see yourself and your place in the world. Because this whole journey, it really starts with understanding the things that are blocking us from seeing ourselves clearly in the first place. Okay, let's unpack this.
So one of the first things the source material points to is how early and how deep this external shaping actually begins. I mean, from birth, we're given labels, names, roles, expectations. We're taught what's acceptable, what brings praise, what leads to disapproval. It's this subtle but constant process of conditioning that molds us.
And in that process of adapting, the source highlights, we inevitably start to suppress parts of ourselves. Maybe it was a particular emotion or a quirky interest or a sensitive reaction that wasn't met with approval. Those pieces just get pushed away, hidden.
Right. And as we do that, we start constructing what Jung termed the persona.
Yeah.
You can think of it as the social mask, the face we present to the world to fit in, function in relationships, get acceptance. It's actually a necessary part of social life.
But here's where it gets tricky, according to the source material. The more we identify with this persona, the more we start to believe the mask is us.
Right.
We lose touch with the spontaneous, maybe messy, unapproved parts underneath.
Exactly. And those suppressed, hidden parts, they don't just vanish. They form what Jung called the shadow. So if the persona is everything we show the world, the shadow is everything we hide, our fears, vulnerabilities, undesirable emotions, even unacknowledged strengths or desires we don't want to admit to.
Okay, but wait, if it's hidden, how does it affect us? Does the source explain that part?
It does, and this is fascinating. The shadow operates below conscious awareness, influencing our behavior in ways we often don't even realize. A classic example the sources discuss is projection. Have you ever had an instant, intense dislike for someone you just met, or felt, disproportionately annoyed or triggered by a specific trait in another person?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like they just rub you the wrong way, and you can't even really put your finger on why.
Jung's insight, as presented here, is that those strong reactions often signal something about our own shadow. When we're deeply disturbed by a quality in someone else, it's very often a quality that exists within us, but we've hidden it away and refused to acknowledge it. We're projecting our own unaccepted parts onto them.
Wow. So the things that annoy me the most about other people might actually be reflections of something I've suppressed in myself. That's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. But here's the incredible insight from this material. The shadow isn't inherently bad. It's not some monster to be vanquished. Those parts you've suppressed. The sources suggest they are often the missing pieces of your wholeness. They hold energy, potential.
So the goal isn't to get rid of your shadow, but to, what? Integrate it, bring it in somehow.
Precisely. Jung argued that true psychological growth, that path to individuation, involves facing what you've denied within yourself. It's about bringing the shadow into the light of consciousness. And the sources highlight that when you begin to do this, you don't just become nicer or something. You actually unlock a profound source of personal power, authenticity, and a much deeper sense of freedom.
Because you're no longer spending all that energy keeping parts of yourself hidden away. You become more whole. This feels like where the real journey truly begins, right? By challenging that initial idea of who you thought you were.
Exactly. Most people, let's be honest, move through life with a relatively fixed idea of, I am this person, this is my identity. They define themselves by their history, their job, their nationality, their personality traits. But this material makes it really clear that identity, while functional, is often just a surface-level construct. It's a tiny fraction of a much vaster reality of who you are.
So finding yourself isn't about creating some new perfect identity. It's more about uncovering what's already there, buried underneath.
Yes, the sources really emphasize that within each of us is this immense inner landscape. Forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, desires we never allowed ourselves to feel, potentials that lie dormant. Finding yourself isn't manufacturing something new. It's the courageous act of excavating what's been buried deep within you, perhaps for decades.
Have you ever felt that persistent, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, longing for something more, a sense that there's a deeper, maybe greater version of you waiting to emerge? The sources suggest that isn't just random discontent. It's the voice of your unconscious mind, that vast inner landscape, calling you toward wholeness, toward that journey of individuation.
And as we discussed, that journey means integrating all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the acceptable and the rejected. But you have to see them first, right? You have to confront them. And that's often where people stop.
Because facing yourself is fundamentally uncomfortable. It means looking at things you've maybe ignored for years, questioning beliefs you've held onto for safety, sitting with fears, and acknowledging inner conflicts.
Yeah, think about how much we as a society tend to avoid stillness, avoid quiet. We fill our lives constantly, don't we? Constant activity, notifications, distractions, work, entertainment, social media. The source material doesn't dismiss this entirely, of course not, but it does suggest this avoidance is often a powerful defense mechanism.
A way to keep those deeper, uncomfortable questions and hidden aspects of ourselves at bay.
Precisely. It keeps us from having to look too closely.
But as we've seen with the shadow, those hidden aspects don't just disappear because you avoid them. They tend to show up anyway, often in less conscious, maybe more painful ways, like chronic anxiety, patterns of self-sabotage, unfulfilling relationships, or just that persistent feeling of being lost, even when you seem to have everything.
Your unconscious mind is always communicating with you through feelings, intuition, dreams, those repetitive patterns in your life. But we've been conditioned, generally, to listen primarily to the rational conscious mind, to the external world. Yet the sources show that if you begin to pay attention inward, you start to see these undeniable patterns. How old wounds are influencing your present choices, how suppressed desires are subtly shaping your behavior, and how the things you fear most often contain the very lessons you need to learn for your growth.
The source material gives a really poignant example. The fear of rejection. So many people spend their lives terrified of what others think, right? Avoiding conflict, muting their true voice just to maintain a sense of harmony or belonging. But where does that fear really come from? Is it truly about others' opinions in the present moment, or is it rooted much deeper, in an old wound perhaps? A childhood experience where they felt unseen, or judged, or unworthy?
And Jung would argue, as these sources detail, that fear isn't just an emotion. It's a shadow aspect that hasn't been fully acknowledged and owned. Until it's brought into conscious awareness and integrated, it continues to pull the strings, basically controlling your actions from the background.
But here's the truly powerful turning point, the potential shift. When you summon the courage to face these hidden parts, your fears, your denied desires, your vulnerabilities, they start to lose their power over you. I mean, imagine living without that constant fear of judgment, speaking your truth not from defiance, but from a place of quiet knowing, making decisions based on what truly resonates within you, not just what others expect. The sources describe this as the profound power unlocked through individuation.
Yeah, it's not about becoming a different person, like you said, but becoming more of the person you already are, beneath all the layers we build up.
So, how do you even start that process? Uncovering these unconscious forces.
Well, the sources we explored highlights several paths Jung really championed. One is paying close attention to symbols and dreams. Jung saw dreams not as just random brain noise, but as vital messages from the deeper self, often using symbolic language to reveal hidden truths or point toward imbalances that need attention.
Okay, and creative expression too, like art or writing.
Absolutely. Creative expression through art, writing, music, movement, whatever works for you, is also crucial. It provides a pathway to integrate material from the unconscious mind without the filter of the rational ego always getting in the way.
Right.
But perhaps the most fundamental step, really emphasized throughout the material, is simply cultivating awareness. Just basic awareness.
How so?
The moment you start pausing, questioning your automatic thoughts, your knee-jerk reactions, your deeply held beliefs about yourself and the world, that very moment of questioning is the first step onto this path of transformation.
The moment you choose to stop running from discomfort and instead turn toward it with a sense of curiosity, maybe, that's when you begin the process of reclaiming your true self. Because the unfortunate truth highlighted by this material is that most people live their entire lives as strangers to themselves. It's kind of sad when you think about it. They follow paths laid out for them without ever really questioning if it's their path. They suppress their natural impulses and innate wisdom, unaware that their greatest strength actually lies in embracing the totality of who they are, shadow and all.
But the choice is available to you, to anyone listening. You have the potential to break free from those illusions, shed the layers of conditioning and fear, and step into the fullness of who you are, unafraid.
And moving even deeper now, the sources we've explored delve into something even more ancient, more universal, these hidden archetypes within you. These aren't just psychological concepts, are they? They are described as fundamental patterns buried deep in the psyche that hold a key to unlocking not just your shadow, but maybe your greatest potential too.
Right. If finding yourself were easy, if it was just about deciding one day to be authentic, well, everyone would already be living fully aligned lives. But it's complex, precisely because it involves confronting forces that shaped us from birth, facing those rejected parts in the shadow, and integrating them.
Which raises that important question. Why are we drawn to certain behaviors, certain fears? Why do we repeat patterns even when we consciously try really hard to change?
Jung's revolutionary answer, which is discussed extensively in this material, points to archetypes. These universal, deep-rooted psychological blueprints that influence our personalities, our motivations, and how we interact with the world.
And these archetypes, they reside in what Jung called the collective unconscious.
Exactly. A layer of the psyche shared by all humans, inherited almost like a psychological DNA from our ancestors. They manifest in myths, stories, symbols, our dreams. They shape not only our individual identity, but how we make sense of the whole human experience.
You think about the recurring characters and themes in stories across all cultures. The brave hero, the wise old mentor, the cunning trickster, the nurturing mother figure. These aren't just literary devices. The sources argue they represent real psychological forces and patterns that are constantly at play within each of us.
Take the hero archetype, for instance. It's that part of you that feels a calling, that longs for purpose, that wants to overcome obstacles and grow stronger. It's what drives you to face challenges.
But as the source points out, the hero is almost always accompanied by their shadow, the repressed fears, the perceived weaknesses, sometimes even the unused potential that the hero denies in themselves. In myths, the hero has to confront this shadow, right? Often symbolized by a monster or some seemingly insurmountable challenge before they can truly evolve and complete their journey.
And translating that to your own life. Have you ever known you needed to make a big change, maybe pursue a dream or set a boundary, but something deep inside just resisted? Or had an opportunity to step into a greater version of yourself, but fear, doubt, or just inertia held you back? The sources describe that internal battle as the dynamic between the hero and the shadow playing out within your own psyche.
And the crucial mistake, which this material highlights, is trying to simply suppress the shadow, trying to force the good hero part to win by just denying the bad part.
Right. Jung believed that true transformation, the successful hero's journey within, happens when you integrate the shadow. when you actually learn from it and incorporate its energy and wisdom.
Okay, so give me an example. If you struggle with intense self-doubt.
Okay, yeah. Instead of just trying to silence that voice, Jung would encourage you, and this material guides you, to ask, where did this doubt originate? Is it truly yours, or was it maybe planted by past experiences, critical voices from childhood? And what lessons does this doubt actually hold? Could the uncomfortable experience of doubt sometimes hide a strength, like humility perhaps, or the capacity to see multiple perspectives, or even the wisdom to proceed cautiously instead of rushing in?
Seeing our internal struggles not just as flaws or weaknesses, but as messages, as dynamics between these archetypal forces within us, that fundamentally changes how we approach self-discovery and growth, doesn't it?
It really does. And the sources explore how archetypes go way beyond just the hero and shadow. One of the most significant pairs Jung discussed are the anima and animus.
Ah, yes, the anima and animus. Explain those again.
Jung proposed that within every man is a hidden feminine side. He called it the anima. And within every woman is a hidden masculine side, the animus. Now, this isn't about gender identity in a physical sense, okay?
Yeah.
It's about the balance and integration of psychological energies. The anima represents qualities often associated with the feminine.
Right.
Intuition, emotion, creativity, connection. The animus represents qualities often associated with the masculine, logic, structure, assertiveness, action.
And the sources explain that when these internal energies are balanced and integrated within you, you feel more whole, more complete, essentially. But when they are out of balance, when you reject or suppress one side, that's when inner conflict and limitation can arise.
Exactly. For example, a man who's heavily identified with a purely masculine persona might reject his anima and then struggle deeply with vulnerability or emotional expression. Or a woman suppressing her animus might find it difficult to be assertive, to set boundaries, or to act decisively in the world. But the sources show that when these energies are embraced and integrated, they become immense sources of strength and versatility. And this leads to one of the most fundamental truths that this source material points toward. To truly find yourself, to embark on that path of individuation, you really must embrace all the parts of your psyche, the light and the dark, the conventionally masculine and feminine qualities, the known and the unknown. It is the process of becoming psychologically whole.
Okay, but there's one final piece, isn't there? One ultimate revelation presented in this material that seems to tie everything together. It suggests that the greatest obstacle to finding yourself isn't just fear or conditioning or even the unintegrated shadow. It's something much deeper, woven into the very fabric of how we perceive ourselves and reality.
Right. We've journeyed through the masks we wear, the persona, the parts we hide, the shadow, and the ancient patterns that influence us, the archetypes. Now we confront what these sources present as the deepest illusion of all, the illusion of a fixed, static self.
Most people operate under the assumption that their identity is a solid, unchanging thing. This is who I am, I have a history, a personality, and that's it. That's the baseline, right?
Yeah, that's the default. But Jung, and the wisdom he drew upon in these sources, points to something radical. The self, in its ultimate sense, is not static at all. It is fluid, ever-changing, and infinitely vaster than the small identity we usually attach to.
So what if the version of you that you identify with right now, the one with your name and your personal history, what if it's just a tiny fragment of something immense? A single expression of a limitless consciousness that holds the wisdom of generations within it.
Jung explored this through the concept of the self with a capital S. Not the small, ego-driven self that clings to labels and definitions, but the totality of your being, encompassing conscious and unconscious, past and potential. This realization, as presented here, is both incredibly liberating and, frankly, kind of terrifying, too.
Terrifying how?
Because it implies that many of the fears you hold, the limitations you feel, the rigid stories you tell yourself about who you are and aren't, those aren't the ultimate truth. They're often temporary constructs built by the mind, specifically by the ego.
Right. The ego isn't bad. The sources clarify that. It serves a vital function in helping us navigate the world, creating a sense of individual identity and boundaries.
Sure, it's necessary. But it is the part of you that creates separation. It's the voice that says, this is me, and this is not me. It builds walls, it defends its identity, and it keeps you tethered to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are limiting or painful.
And according to this material, while the ego is necessary, it is ultimately the greatest obstacle to finding the self, the capital S self.
Exactly. Because you are not confined to a single fixed identity defined by your ego.
Wow.
You are a being in constant evolution, a vast field of potential. The moment you can begin to loosen your grip, you're clinging to who you think you are, you start to unlock infinite possibilities.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you step beyond this illusion of a small, fixed self and into the fullness of existence that Jung points toward? The path offered in these sources, it sounds like it requires courage, consistent introspection, and a willingness to surrender much of what you thought you knew.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix. First, the sources suggest embrace the unknown. We are naturally wired to fear what we don't understand, but this is precisely where growth and transformation happen. Lean into the mysteries within you, the parts of your psyche you haven't explored, with curiosity rather than fear.
Okay, second.
Second, consciously work to release attachment to labels. You are more than your name, your profession, your past mistakes, or your personality type. Practice letting go of those rigid identities to create space for the vaster being that is waiting to emerge.
Makes sense. And third.
Third, listen to the unconscious. Really listen. Your dreams, your instincts, your deep intuitions, those gut feelings, they are not random. The sources emphasize they are messages from the self, guiding you toward integration and wholeness. The more you quiet the noise of the external world and the ego, the more you can tune into this inner wisdom.
And finally, surrender to the process. Finding yourself isn't a destination you reach and then you're done, is it? It's an ongoing journey, a continuous unfolding of deeper truths and vaster potentials. It requires patience and trust.
And here is the ultimate revelation, the profound truth that these sources circle back to again and again. You were never actually lost. You haven't been missing. The self, the vast, limitless being you've been seeking, has been within you all along, just waiting patiently for you to remember.
So, as you move forward from this deep dive, maybe consider this provocative thought. Will you continue navigating the world primarily as a fragment, defined by old fears, conditioning, and the illusions of a small ego? Or will you step forward, courageously embracing your shadow, integrating your inner energies, and remembering the vast, limitless being you were always meant to become?
Life, as Carl Jung suggested, and as these sources powerfully illustrate, does not truly begin until you find yourself. And now, drawing from this material, you have a clear understanding of the path.